because we have such a short time, I'm going to ask for your audience questions at the beginning, right at the start of the session, not before our remaining panelists have say what they want to talk about, but certainly very quickly into the program. I'm not going to wait till the end for audience Q&A. So let's get started, and with the exception of one of our newest panelists, Greg Ellis, who's waving to you from the middle there. In fact, if you're going to sit there, I'll move over. We're just going to go down the line here and make some opening remarks so you're introduced to these companies. Let's see, we're going to start with Steve Horn, who's the Vice President of Programming at Metacafe, a company that some of you may know, and Steve is at the end. We'll next hear from Michael Arrieta, who's sitting next to me with big Air Studios, and then finally we'll hear from Greg Ellis, who's at DaCast, the new fairly new company that's an enabler of some of these the technology that enables some of these web video production services that we're going to be talking about. So without further ado, let's start with Steve. Steve Horn, tell us what you're up to at Metacafe and what your vision of this is.
So at Metacafe, the task is to get video views. That should sound familiar to a lot of people, but the way we've decided to do that is we've organized our site around premium short-form content. We've just built a daily content destination specifically for guys, call it Video Entertainment for Guys, across 5 verticals: movies, music, sports, television, and there's one more. Oh yeah, video games. That's a little big for that demographic. Mid-20s, college-educated guys. Our basic philosophy over there is we want to create content that is, actually, we're in a different sort of spot. We are not only a content distributor, we take content, we help over 100 partners get views for their content, but we're also content creators. So we create content that's, we say kick-ass, not jackass for this demographic. And we have an editorial team here in San Francisco who every day curates the entertainment, the homepage for entertainment. And just 8 weeks ago, we've launched what we call MEN, the Metacafe Entertainment Network. I don't think the positioning could be much stronger unless we called it, I don't know, males 18 to 34. That would have been a good name for a website. So we have these editors who are picking this content. There's such a wealth of video content out there, and that's what we're up to. And we match advertisers with that demographic through a variety of different ways. Of course, we have a network business, but we also have a really nice direct business where we bring brands into original productions that we do.
Did you want to show us any samples now, or as we go into the presentation?
I do have I have a sizzle reel
Sure.
of some of our original productions. We can take a look. It's really short. Is this one on? Yeah. One of the things that we wanted to do in order to differentiate ourselves from all of the other websites out there, we do have access by the merit of our size. We have a fair amount of access to celebrities, studio people, video game creators, video game developers. And we wanted to do something a little bit different with that access. So we started sending comedians in to interview celebrities. And the result is something we call Metacafe Unfiltered.
Metacafe. Oh, I love Metacafe. Oh, we should start this over.
I mean, Metacafe.com.
Metacafe.com.
Oh, I'm Kirk Zipfel here with Metacafe.
Hi, Matt.
Hey, man.
Remember me?
Yeah, I do.
And I decided that I was going to do some...
Get out.
Why is it called Jackass Triple Disc? There are no boobs in this movie.
How could I get the same kind of intensity that you bring to all of your roles?
It's genetic.
This is kind of a 3D interview because we're interviewing in a tweet dimension.
There, Nicolas Cage, lifetime achievement and viral greatness.
I'm not as viral as I'd like to be.
Can you name all 3 dimensions?
1, 2, and 3.
Using some bread. I'll kiss you right now.
That was for the baby.
Just keep the eye line up here.
No, I'm not looking down there.
You know why? Because this is not. Just keep it up here. Don't. You just went down a little bit.
I like the mice. I like the rats. I like the squirrels. I like the cats.
gotta pee real bad, man.
Crazy. Well, it's Comic-Con. Everybody gets crazy.
Weird theories out there, like E.T.'s finger was brown because, you know, like...
And it looked sore with that red tip.
Do you ever try on clothes that we're gonna, at the stores? Thanks, that's all the time we have.
You're the best interviewer ever. Well done.
So that's one of the editorial franchises that we've had a lot of success with, Unfiltered. Just going in there and mixing things up with very traditional opportunities around celebrities. So
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Steve. Stephen, let's turn to Michael Arrieta. Tell us what Big Air Studios does and how you do it.
Great. I started Big Air Studios about 2 years ago. Before that, I was the executive vice president in charge of digital for Sony Pictures. So the beginnings of everything, I was at Sony for 12 years. So kind of all the things that are starting to happen today came kind of under my watch. And what we saw was a real shift in consumer preferences for media. Obviously, people still like things in theaters and on DVDs and all those other great places, but there's a lot of emerging connected distribution. So at Big Air, we are a full-service film production, distribution, acquisition company. We put movies in theaters, we put them on DVD, but we really focus more on where consumers are going. So we over-index on what we call connected distribution. So the iTunes, the Netflix of the world, those types of distribution services are what are most important to us. We've primarily been focused on releasing other people's product right now, which happens when you're new and just starting out, when you don't have as much capital or as much of a track record. So we've put a couple films out so far. Great acclaim. They're going off on all platforms. We're really trying to use
full-length feature films.
Full-length feature films. We will be getting into all forms of production in terms of series-based, episodic content, transmedia content, and of course full-length features. We actually believe that if you're a studio, in the grandest sense, we think of ourselves as a studio in the way that we would think of ourselves at Sony Pictures or Warner Brothers or a Lionsgate or somebody at that size is kind of where we ultimately believe we're going to play, except for we're going to be playing in a slightly different game of connected distribution. You know, we're really focused more on the future. We believe that consumers should get media experiences across whatever platform or retailer that they want. So if you're a person who wants to pay-per-view on DirecTV, download on iTunes, stream on YouTube, walk into an AMC theater, we're going to enable all of those experiences. But we're also going to be giving you new content experiences, multi-screen, transmedia type programming, because we think that the new connected audience is going to really demand that. And we learned that at Sony, where I created about 50 plus web series, transmedia series, launched the first full-length feature films directly on cell phones, directly on the internet. We had interactive journeys with a show called Buried Alive, which won an interactive Emmy for that, or was nominated. I guess we didn't win. Should have won. But really great kind of interactive journey, which also cumed into a full-length feature. So we believe that storytelling can come in many, many forms. Sometimes it's sit back for an hour or two and watch a movie. Sometimes it's sit back for 20 minutes and watch a TV show. Sometimes it's get blasted from 3-minute increments, all of which are relevant and all of which are things that we're looking to do.
Great. So a new reinventing the studio system.
Yep.
Based on the old studio system. Great. Well, Greg Ellis, who is one of the only people whose biography is not in your handout, has just joined us from a company called DaCast, and a vendor, as he says, from the supply side, a long 20 years experience, mostly in Silicon Valley, it sounds like.
Silicon Valley in LA.
And working on enabling technology. Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and what brought you to this world of web video production?
Oh, a long path to web video production on the personal side. But DaCast is a streaming as a service video streaming platform on the web. Essentially, we are a paywall-focused monetization tool for independent content producers, rights owners, sports, and other types of event and content people to get their content to the consumer directly and to monetize that in the mid and long tail of the market. That, in essence, is what we do. I'm essentially on here to give some experience in a broader base as to what people are doing to monetize their content on the web, how they're taking both traditional content, such as sports events, and made-for-web content, and putting it out there, what strategies they're following in order to monetize and make money, and generally to build a new distribution network and paradigm that's based on the internet, as we see in the first panel today, or the second panel where Laura and Spencer were talking. As we talked about the unbundling world, we're starting to see in the broadband and cable distribution, you start seeing a lot of people who have been riding along with the bundles and who don't have the high audience contents, looking for new paths and new ways to distribute their content and hit their audience in a broader sense with full monetization capabilities. We build the gears. We're highly integrated, highly automated, and very white label. We're not a portal like Metacafe. We sit behind people who are actually competing with, or hoping to compete with Metacafe. And we sit in front of people like Michael's company, helping them to have a very low cost and cost efficient distribution infrastructure that integrates the monetization elements while providing the APIs that let people like you let people like your company sell your own advertising and your own monetization and bring that into the infrastructure we've already built for you. We have over 5,000 broadcasters now. Over 500 or so are paying at a significant monthly rate, and over 250 of those are using paywall monetization, either subscriptions or pay-per-view. About 65% of our traffic today is live. We have events that range up to hundreds of thousands of simultaneous viewers. We have an average watch viewing time of over 30 minutes on each of the events and files that our customers host. And our average file size on the 35% of our content that is VOD, that our customers' content, it's not ours, obviously, that's VOD, the average file size there is over 1 gigabyte. So we're clearly not cats playing piano. We have a lot of 3-minute shorts up, but we have a lot of features up.
By the way, when you say broadcasters, you don't mean the conventional kind of broadcast over-the-air TV, and that's one of our problems in this industry. We use the legacy terms for new kinds of business.
Actually, I mean both. For us,
Let me
you're
bring the
right.
microphone a little closer, please.
For us, broadcaster is anyone who's transmitting content over our infrastructure. But I have Ghanaian television that broadcasts throughout Europe on our infrastructure. We have 4 or 5 independent TV networks here in the US, independent stations and very small publishing groups who use us to broadcast unique content on the website. It's not truly over the top because it doesn't come along with parallel distribution through cable. It is pretty much pure web distribution, but it does come from a mix of traditional broadcasters. We have a lot of soccer, we have a lot of tennis, we have niche sports like Ultimate Frisbee, which just a month ago had a club championship with over 100,000 viewers on a pay-per-view event watching a Frisbee competition.
Greg, are either of these guys your customers yet?
No.
Not yet. Okay, thank you. It's a good introduction, so you have a feel for what we're all up to. The next thing I really wanted to ask, and both Michael and Stephen, in your opening remarks, you gave a little examples of what you do. What's been the greatest success you've had so far in developing any of this content? What's been the biggest challenge you've had?
Well, there's, I think my biggest success is yet to come, as we all do. But the early days of, IP distribution and digital media.
Greater success.
Greater success. When at Sony, I go back a little bit, we decided to start making web series and starting to put things out on, IP networks. And for instance, iTunes didn't exist, YouTube didn't exist, Netflix didn't exist, little things like that. And we started to make programming, and these services started to come along. And we had this grand notion that you were going to start to make really short, content, and that magically they'd turn into feature films and TV shows and the like. And in some cases, we actually were successful in that. Robot Chicken, which is on Adult Swim, was a show that we created. It was called Sweet J Presents. It was on a service that we launched. It was a precursor to YouTube called Screen Blast. And it's still a long-running television show. So as far as a thing that started on the web that's become a very successful traditional media property. I think that is probably the most successful ever, and nobody knows it actually started as a web property. But it's made a lot of money, and it's a great show, and it came with a great creative vision, a great story, and it actually kind of worked. It released online in 1999, 2000, okay, as a web series, which is pretty amazing. So I'm pretty proud of that, and the industry kind of grew up around it. I think now what I like to see the most is really what consumers are doing. You know, I also had this whole aspect of technology sitting inside of Sony, and we had this vision for connected distribution and connected play. We thought, we tried to launch a widget-based television at Sony in like 2002, 2003. I was over in Japan in the R&D labs, and we were looking at these new technologies about putting IP connectivity straight into TVs, and we couldn't make it work. It was just the technology wasn't there yet. Obviously, we've come a very long way, and every television has some kind of widget and some kind of connected platform. Well, the thing to me that is most interesting about that is what it actually does for a content creator and supplier to actually bring content in new ways to consumers. So I think one of the greatest successes is seeing things like Netflix being proliferated across devices, and now that's given way to what you've seen with other services, such as Sony has Crackle, HBO Go is now launching across all platforms, et cetera, and you're getting a kind of a pervasive, set of, connections.
So is this the biggest challenge of just distribution?
Well, the biggest challenge of distribution at first was technological adoption. I think a success is that, Parks and Associates put out a survey that basically said 81% of every American has a connection to a video service over the top, be it through their smartphone, through their Xbox, through their Roku, through whatever. So almost everybody has an IP video service in their house. I mean, we've kind of hit almost full penetration. So that's a great statistic that I think is really exciting for us. The challenge still is that services need to get better, bandwidth still needs to improve, things like searchability, usability still need to improve, still needs to be a little easier. iTunes is easy, but not easy enough still, in my opinion. It's so easy to turn on your TV and sit back and do nothing. So I think there's a lot of challenges to that. It's still not that easy to sell out an ad network online. You can sell ads, but there's a lot of avails still. There's some challenges about personalization and the like. So I'm excited to see it happening, but really, we're looking at a pretty small digital market in comparison to what it's going to be. But it's also, it's got its challenges to create programming that's truly interactive and truly interesting, and make all the services really at the level that they should be. But that's really why we're here, right?
Right. Stephen, what's your biggest success so far?
I think
getting Matt Damon to show up every time?
What's that?
Getting Matt Damon on the air every time?
Yeah, we've done a few things with Matt Damon, but no, I think the biggest success it's a little more philosophical. Content availability is everywhere. The type of content that we're specifically interested in: movie trailers, video game clips, video game trailers. So I think we've had a lot of success in giving people a reason to come to Metacafe to watch this stuff versus going to YouTube or IGN or where I used to work, or any number of places that they could find this content. And we've done that through our presentation layer, through having editors, an editorial voice that goes pervasively through this, as well as some of our original productions. Our original productions that we've tried, we've actually been selling them. Brands want to be around that content. Earlier this year, we sold 8 episodes of a show called Trending Topics. Anyone want to guess what that's about? We sold that to T-Mobile for a very nice production there. And we also recently just sold, through Paramount Home Entertainment, our show called Pause Play with Super 8. And they were interested in Metacafe, of course, because we have scale, but also because of the way that we bring our editorial voice into the product. If we can watch real quickly just some of the integration with Super 8, I think, if that's cool.
If you can do it real quickly, because we're
all right.
Let's get it short.
Let's give it. So I think
it'll be available. Or can you send us a link?
I absolutely will. So I think that for me is the biggest recent success, is figuring out what can we do as a company to get people to come to think about us. Because
what's the biggest barrier or challenge you encountered?
It's at first it was why are we doing this? There's a million pieces of content out there. Anyone with a camera and a green screen can make this content. So the barrier to us was not can we do it, but what are we going to do with the content? You know, nobody wants to make content that nobody sees. You know, so the technology for us is not an issue. It's more the reasoning behind the content that's been a
Greg,
challenge.
on your side of the equation, where are the success stories and the challenges?
Well, I think the biggest success we've had has been developing a model with a bunch of performing artists and their management companies that integrates social media use with independent delivery of their video content in a way that starts driving a lot of audience to websites and other properties that normally wouldn't have a normal audience, which makes the mid and long tail type of delivery more profitable. We have worked with people like the band Chicago, Noise Suppressor, and a half a dozen artist management companies that have developed a strategy where people are primarily using Facebook, some use of MySpace, other social media, which they use that as the driver to the pay content and the paywall. They have developed not the traditional content that they need to have sync rights for to distribute, but actually unique content where they have performed non-recorded and non-released material, where they have the backstage, the rehearsals, the practices, the connection that's all tied with the social. And we pretty much have a formula now that we can take to an artist when we approach them or when they approach us and say, here is what other people are doing. This can generate for you between $50,000 and $200,000 a month in additional income. And here's how you market it. Here's how you go out and do this. And that's been our biggest success, is evolving.
You've got a template that can apply almost anywhere.
We have a template that so far in the music and performing arts area has applied. We're working on similar templates. Now, mind you, a template for us also includes customization and additional features added to our platform.
That's where you make your money, right?
Right. And so we have built this template now through our first launch type artists. We now have a couple of film festivals, smaller film festivals, that are moving their archives and their libraries onto our platform to distribute. And we're working out a template with them. So what we found, and the biggest success here, is identifying that there is a social media integrated approach that can make long tail video profitable. You don't need the big celebrities all the time. You don't need to be on a 1 million views per month website to always make money. And advertising doesn't need to be the way you make your money. You can do it through a paywall.
Well, I want to pick up on that. Did you have something to add,
actually,
Michael?
I really love that. I mean, one of the points for us at Big Air was we saw that there was a lot of films made in the world that never see the light of day. Everyone who ever makes a film tries to do the route of getting a Sony Pictures or a Warner Brothers or a Paramount or somebody to take it, and largely they fail because thousands of movies every year get made and hundreds get distributed through a major studio, and then you go to other options. So, and some of them just never see anybody. They never get distributed anywhere. They didn't get accepted at the Sundance Film Festival or any festival. They didn't ever get distribution. But there's some passion, some creativity behind it. But the world of distribution has just deemed it to be too small. It just doesn't monetize. The cost benefit of taking it out has just not been there. But what we saw with connected platforms is the cost of delivery, the cost of prep, delivery, marketing has radically changed. So on one end of the spectrum, we take out very big films that are very commercial with stars in them and high concepts and the like, and those are in all screens and generally what makes you, kind of a larger distributor. But we've also opened up a secondary part of our business, which really is intended, so we have to talk about how to do this, about getting the masses to be able to get access to the masses of content that doesn't otherwise flow through distribution. So, if you're not deemed to be a certain size, you're not going to get on iTunes, you're not going to get on shelves of Walmart, you're certainly not going to get in an AMC theater. But there are fans of that, or potential fans, that just want to see that and can't get access. So we're enabling that, and our largest way to connect people together using connected platforms is number one, but to market it is through the social web. So, search engine optimizations, finding like-minded people, using the, social media outreach you can actually connect audiences large and small. And then if you can keep the costs down, and so you can make a delivery platform to be profitable, you can find people who will pay for it. And then as a first category. And then secondarily, you can find people who will advertise passion groups around, passion projects. So we're trying to monetize the long tail. I mean, the deep long tail. Most people think of the long tail, and what they really think of is like kind of probably like something like mid-neck that they think is a long tail. Long tail is really long tail, and we're talking about very, very niche content. And there's tens of thousands of films, and even more so if you get into series and other things, they've never seen the light of day. And one of the things we're doing a big area is enabling that.
Well, one of the big, what you said earlier in your earlier remarks, and I think Stephen alluded to this also, with the global environment we're in right now, and the expatriates everywhere in the world, in another place, the web enables them to see movies, shows from home.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what you say, part of what you're looking at in these niches.
Oh, yeah. I mean, consumers want more programming choices and content than they get access to today. I mean, you think that there's so much content, but in effect, really if you think of a small filmmaker who, last year there were over 3,500 films got submitted to the Sundance Film Festival and about 150 got in. So there's a lot of people who didn't even get into Sundance. You don't get in there, big studio's not gonna pick you up, et cetera, et cetera. But there are billions of people on the planet, and there's some subset of those people that wanna see each of those films.
There's billions of video makers on this planet too now.
Exactly, exactly.
Everyone
which is more exciting. So what we're trying to do is find ways to connect all those people. So
well, let me ask you, because all three of you have alluded to this in some way, the advertising or the revenue model here, the revenue component of all this. And Stephen, you said you had some ad support for some of what you're up to, or sponsorship support, underwriting of some sort. What's the best approach right now to funding these kind of niche or special interest video programming?
So we actually built a studio in our San Francisco office. Very simple, a couple cameras, green screen. And so our production costs are about $100 to $150 per minute. And we use the same people that build the page every day, that source this content, are the same people writing the scripts, appearing in the videos. So once we've nailed that part of it, we can then build an audience for that and then take that out to an advertiser.
So you do that first. You don't have an advertiser come in, find an advertiser who wants to support.
We do it both ways. So some shows we launched from scratch with an advertisers.
What are some examples of that?
The trending topics one that I mentioned, that was a pure. We just did a pilot. We took it to T-Mobile, and they purchased it and funded the remaining 8 episodes of that show. I think for me, the first thing that we want to nail is we want to hit get the editorial feel of the show correct before we try to bring a sponsor in.
That's actually really important. When we were creating shows and any project that I'm involved with, we have made, and I've continued to make the conscious effort that I'll never greenlight anything predicated on an advertiser supporting it. Now, there'll be integrations and other things that make sense. I think it really does modify. It's also, everyone's got their own philosophy. So some people on a risk basis would rather have an advertiser who's in, underwrite it, and then go and make the best possible show. We've looked at the other side as make the best possible show. If the broadest audience will watch it, the advertisers will come. Because the advertiser doesn't really care about the show, they care about their brand message getting seen.
That's right.
So the higher the quality of the content, the more monetization options you have. The better it is, it'll sell on TV, it'll sell on DVD, it'll sell on whatever. Oh, and also advertisers will follow it. So the smarter you can be about monetization across multiple streams of revenue, the better off you're going to be.
What works best from your experience?
Well, today's, if I think of a feature film, or just any, kind of scripted series or whatever, there are businesses that will pay license fees for it, like a Netflix or somebody else. That's one way to monetize. I think my favorite is I want consumers to pay for stuff, because if it's good enough, people will pay.
So buying tickets.
Buying tickets to the theater, buy a DVD, pay-per-view it on DirecTV, pay-per-view it on iTunes, whatever. Like, if your content's good enough and people pay for it, that's what gets me out of bed.
How do you, the trick to that, both on linear television and movie theatrical releases is a lot of promotion money to drive people to that. You're suggesting that social media is going to be the way to drive people to be aware of this
Right.
content.
Well, that's one of the big changes that is happening. You know, when we created Big Air, part of the concept was to improve distribution. The major studios do it a certain way, and I was a major studio guy for my entire career. And they're very, very good at the Spider-Mans of the world and the Harry Potters of the world. And, you know, certainly, you know, that's a fabulous business unto itself just because they're big tentpole things. When you looked at the shifting of the world, you've got all sorts of problems with piracy, flattening DVD sales, et cetera, more challenges to the monetization system, which then causes you to have to spend less on production and also spend less on marketing if your revenue streams are going to go down. The shifting from buying content to renting content is a very material issue with major studios right now, as we're all shifting back to a rental model more so than buying DVDs. We rent, and that's a difference between making, say, $15 on a sale versus making $2 or $3. And 7 times the people aren't watching a rental, so there's a bit of revenue going down the bottom of the boat. So you look at marketing as kind of the big driver, and being more efficient at marketing is really what we're about at Big Air. So we leverage costless marketing to the extent possible, and really, before we spend a single dollar on media, we've exhausted every single possibility on the social web and every other form of non-cash marketing before I ever spend a dollar, whereas that wasn't really the way we approached it in a major studio. We, of course, would have billboards on Sunset. We, of course, would be buying Thursday TV spots. We'd, of course, be putting print ads different places. And then we think about what we were also going to do digitally. I've kind of inverted that and try to spend as much as possible digitally and as least amount possible in general. And we're seeing that actually has a very nice trade-off to the economics.
Greg, you also mentioned advertising as part of this equation. How are you or your customers approaching this and the revenue model options that Michael's described?
Sometimes successfully, sometimes not. What Michael described is kind of a mark of what our more successful broadcasters have come to in terms of their marketing strategy. What has worked particularly well with advertising has been companion ads that are especially unique merchandise oriented. For example, one of our broadcasters is in the disc dog competition area.
What?
Frisbee dogs. Okay. They bring up about 40,000 unique views a month on their archive and live content. They go all around the world filming competitions, filming exhibitions. They have dog superstars that they take those clips and put them on YouTube and Dailymotion and other free portals in order to drive more traffic. They don't put inline video ads at all. They don't even do overlays because it annoys their customers. What they do is they provide free and paywalled content with companion ads and merchandising for Frisbees, for dog clothing, for dog accessories, all around.
Is it going to work its way to NBC as the Westminster Kennel Club shows?
Well, actually, you know, this is the type of thing. Almost everyone we've talked to either failed to get distribution in the traditional media or is looking to get there. There's one company that I'll mention by name that isn't our customer, but Hanuman Media, based down in LA, has produced a unique 3-minute per episode web series called Bollywood to Hollywood. And my understanding through the industry is that they now have a deal for a feature, and they now have a deal for a series. Now, I'm not sure, and I can't confirm that, and I'm sure several of you might be able to confirm it, but you know, they have found they did purely a YouTube and a home-based approach, but once they launch the series, once they launch the feature, they start building a property that's going to drive them back in, so I'm sure they're talking to us and every one of our competitors about how do I now have a way to monetize my own content that maybe isn't going to be out on Hulu, that maybe isn't going to be monetizable someplace else because it's more niche. You know, what can I bring along to the Desi community in North America that isn't related to this more broad-based Bollywood to Hollywood story, but is targeted towards people who might watch their event. Advertising is the companion ad. It's very niche targeted, It's very much aimed at the CPMs that mobile advertisers get when you have that very well-defined narrow audience. It's not pre-roll, mid-roll. It's
Right.
not TV-like advertising in the video.
Okay, well, we can come back to that in a moment. As I promised, we're going to turn to your audience questions early. So does anybody have anything you're eager to ask the panel based on what we've heard so far? We'll start with Laura. There's a microphone coming your way. Laura Martin.
I'm really interested in the experience you guys have had with like what I would call ideal consumer length, because my understanding was the PC really and mobile devices also really lent themselves to kind of 3 to 5 minute storylines and a lot less to 30 or 60 minute storylines unless they were kind of a proven brand on the network TV and people were catching up. Could you guys talk about ideal consumer length online versus offline platforms?
Ideal length. Michael?
Well, it's funny. When we first started doing original programming for digital platforms, we were constrained by Verizon's VCast system as only being able to handle under 5 minutes of video. And that's largely the reason why everything came in 3 to 5 minute chunks, technology. What we found is the content can be as long as it is good. So, we really had some amazing success putting out feature films, full-length films on mobile phones. And that continues to be a trend that's just unbelievable to me on how much consumption on, now a smartphone with a bigger screen, but even still, we were putting video and continue to put video out on, little 1-inch square, screens, and it was consumed in long form. Short form content's great. It's got its little blast, and YouTube does exist and does really well. YouTube doesn't really do as well on a television set as it does on a PC. The screen gets bigger, the duration of view usually gets longer. But it doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have a very nice long-form experience through...
And long-form in this case means 30 minutes, 60 minutes, or 2 hours?
I'll call it, 15 minutes or more, something like that. I think the creative arc doesn't necessarily matter. There are economies, economic trends, or whatever, however you want to, monetize, that a product has to be about a certain length. A feature film is a 3-act series, 3-act structure, generally 90 minutes to 2 hours. If you see a feature film and it's about 48 minutes, you have this weird, you don't feel complete now.
Is that because you feel you haven't gotten your money's worth, or it should be a TV movie that is 42 minutes long?
Yeah, it's just a different type of, creative structure. There's a reason why feature films have a 3-act structure and are generally about the same length. It's not just because it's kind of what you're expecting as a consumer. There's a reason that there's...
I thought it was distribution, that the theater owner had to be able to have 3 or 4 showings a night.
No, if you see a 3-hour film, you're like want to kill yourself halfway through, right? I mean, I don't care what film it is.
Unless it's Lord of the Rings.
Okay.
Unless it's which?
Very, very rare. Okay. So I think that the quality, it's not so much the length that's the issue. I think long form can go on any platform, and increasingly so, people's propensity to watch video on a tablet or a phone or a PC, it's only getting longer. People are more and more willing to consume video for longer periods of time on those devices. So it just happens to be, if you look at what kind of content's been 2 hours in duration, it's been full feature films. Metacafe, I don't think you have a lot of 2-hour pieces of programming. Now, you probably will over time because it's going to become more cost-effective, advantageous to do so. Things like Hulu have started to bring traditional forms of advertising, longer form distribution, and it does extremely well. If you look at online services, Metacafe has an incredible use of consumers, generally shorter form. Vivo, one of the most populous, kind of services on the internet right now, is music videos. It's short form. You go over to Hulu, very long form, all being viewed pretty much on the same platforms, cell phones, tablets, etc. So I don't think you have to create a certain amount of video. I think the video just has to be good. And if it's a music video or 2 minutes or some of the great things that Metacafe are doing, it's going to get broad views. But you could also go all the way up to full-length feature films, as we did at Sony. We created full-length feature films and put them out, and we're largely viewed on tablets and phones.
Let's let Stephen get a word in there about what's the ideal length for you.
The ideal length is something that it is of course, related to quality and what we're talking about, but we're finding a really nice sweet spot between 2.5 and 3 minutes, because most of the productions which is about the length of a movie trailer, 220 something is the average movie trailer, but the types of shows that we're doing, the original content that we're doing, it's timely and relevant. So people are coming every day to see something, and they're coming to get these little consumption snacks, we call them. So they're not going to come to a Metacafe to watch something they can watch on Hulu. They're going to come to find out what's trending, what's cool through this particular space. We actually have a show called Pixelated, which is 4.5 minutes long. And the other day, I was like, guys, we got to cut this. It's way too long. Nobody's going to sit
You're
through
going to
it.
like something that Laura, I told her about yesterday. It's called 1-second videos. And I have just been exposed to it. It's sort of a neat idea, but you don't tell much of a story there. But it is branded advertising within that.
Right. Well, the 4.5 minutes. So the story was this 4.5 minute video was getting great views for us. Hundreds of thousands of views. But we wanted to also chop it up. So somebody who only had time for 30 seconds, we could then use that as a promo for the larger show. Or if someone only cared about the current video game and movie releases out that week, that segment. So it's a lot of fun, actually, to try to determine the right length. But when you're dropped in a playlist, which is an experience that we give to our users, they're not going to sit there and watch an 8-minute and then a 30-second. So we're in that 2.5 to 3 minute.
Greg, anything from your experience or your clients that has a magic number?
Quite a bit different. Live events, 20 to 30 minutes is what, especially sports, is what the average attachment time tends to be. People will watch 20 minutes, they'll drop off, they'll log back on another 10 minutes later and watch another 20 minutes or something like that. When it comes to entertainment, with a few exceptions, it seems to be right in that 20 to 35 minute range where you hold people's attention. This is what I was saying about building the model for feature films and the film festivals. What they have found is that when they're selling content, they have to do a mix of shorts and features, and they have to package these. This is the kind of a bundling, a small debundling brings them to the web, then they bundle to keep people's attention. So
okay, now
they'll do short and about 20 to 35 minutes chunks on the features.
Okay, so now we're going into the lightning round. We're going to give you 20 to 30 seconds to respond. And I'm going to strictly enforce this because we're running out of time. Real quick questions. The blurb for this session talks about young audiences. Is that the only target for the kind of web video that we're talking about here? Yes or no? Michael?
Absolutely not. I mean, it used to be a young audience. Now, with connections coming into everyone, going all the way up to older generations, I think it's going to be far broader than just young consumers. Young consumers just currently over-index.
Okay. Greg?
No.
Okay. And Stephen?
So
you've said you're focusing on the young
That's our
men.
focus. So yes.
You're going to stay there. Okay.
Yes.
Good. Yes, no, and no. Okay. Next quick question. Google, YouTube, Facebook, all looking at distributing the kind of videos you're talking about. Good or bad for you?
Phenomenal. Everybody should be in the distribution business because that gives us more places to put content. I love having multiple retailers. I think it's really all about consumer choice and connecting to devices, and I want as many people in the business of trying to distribute content on a high quality basis to the consumer and focus on the consumer experience, because that's going to drive more video consumption, more purchases.
Stephen?
Love it. Love YouTube. Love Google. But I think they're the type of place you can get any video. It's a great platform. Any video for any type of audience. Sites like ourselves, Break, I would say College Humor. We're going deeper into creating our value around a particular audience of verticalization. So yes, you can find that same video on YouTube unless we have an exclusive or it's one of our originals. But you come to Metacafe because it's just such a really well-tuned collection of content, of curation of content that I'm going to keep talking. Where's the playoff music?
It's the best marketing tool that the mid and long tail producers have, so it's good for us.
Okay, so good, even though these are giants and usually minnows and whales don't mate very well together. But we'll see how it goes on that. Okay, final one. Is there room for you and a lot of other people in this category? Or do you think there's going to be a shakeout here like there always is? This time we'll start with Greg.
Oh, there's definitely going to be a shakeout in our part. Gosh, I can't even count the number of people who think they're in the same business we are. There are probably 5 to 8 who are actually in the business serving the entertainment production community. We'll probably narrow down to 3 before long, but I think some of them will be sucked up to the big media companies.
Okay, that's typical in this. Stephen?
Yeah, I think consolidation is actually a decent thing to have happen. It just makes everyone else up their game altogether. You know, for us though, it's and sites I think of our size, it's when it's about audience. That's the distinctive part.
Okay, Michael, you get the last word on this one.
Yeah, for my business, you know, being a distributor, there's only really a handful. There's only 6 major studios. There's only 3 mid-majors, and then there's maybe a handful of people that can distribute all the way from theaters all the way to DVD shelves and everything. So there's consolidation's already happened. Yeah. So it'll further, you know, Summit and Lionsgate are talking and other things like that. There'll be further consolidation, but it's a small, in the business that we're in, it's a really finite group of companies. And we feed into the Metacafes and everything else where I think there'll be a lot of consolidation.
Okay, now we go down to the 1-second lightning round. Last question, 1 or 2 word response. What do you want the audience here to take away today from you? What's the one lesson everyone should remember about how to succeed in web video production and distribution?
We're all learning, but you know, think of the consumer because the consumer is right.
Paywall, not advertising.
Yep, know your audience, speak to them, listen to their feedback.
Wow. Okay, a lot of lessons there. Thank you very much. Join me in thanking the panel, and I'll turn it over to Alan.